Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I know there have been some changes last minute on some of the folks that are going to be here, but a very, very warm welcome. My name is Anshul Arora from Advanced Group. Work closely with SEC on a couple of projects. Today, we're going to talk about redefining teaching through AI and with AI. And I know there's been so many topics over the course of the morning already, and so many discussions around AI. We have conversations at a systems level. We have conversations on leadership. We have conversations on curriculum, on data. But ultimately, if we think about the purpose of what we're trying to do, we're trying to improve outcomes for young people, and the interaction between a teacher and a student is the centerpiece and front, of all of that broader ecosystem. So to me, maybe I'm biased. I think this is the most important topic, which is the teaching and learning experience and how that gets affected and potentially amplified by AI. We have a wonderful group of panelists and roundtable members here. I thought we could just start with a very, very brief introduction. If you could just please share your name, the organization that you're from, and maybe just one sentence on the organization. And maybe Stavros, we could start with you if that's all right.
Okay, just because to keep it really short, Stavros Yanuka, I'm CEO of WISE, which is a global think tank of Qatar Foundation that studies innovation education.
Hi, Fernando Diaz del Castillo, Nando. I'm the Chief Learning Officer at Mentu. We are a startup that's building AI tools for teachers.
Hello, I'm Jose Rafael Espinosa. I'm the CEO of Mentu.
Good morning, everyone. Ivan Martinez, head of school at SEK International School Riyadh.
Good morning. I'm Jeannette van Beek. I'm a director of a Symphony Zorg Academy, and I'm also working for Operation Education in the Netherlands.
I'm John Morvac, and I know operation education pretty well in the Netherlands, but I'm an education futurist. I do a lot of consulting and research, mostly for the United Nations system, and also edited a journal on the Horizon, which is the International Journal of Learning Futures.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Glenn Kleiman. I'm a senior advisor at the Stanford University Accelerator for Learning, and also here as part of the COSIN Consortium on School Networking group.
Thank you. I'm Yunus Bensouda Mori. I'm an adjunct lecturer of computer science at Stanford and also founder of LifeTech.ai, working on AI education for public sectors.
Thank you all. So the way we were going to organize the roundtable is really in three parts. We're going to start a little bit with a visioning of what folks think a vision for redefining teaching could look like. A second is a little bit around the challenges that might be there. And the last is potentially a path for educators in schools today. What could be activities and undertakings to kind of go on the positive path towards that vision. So in starting with that vision, I was speaking with a friend this morning who was like, I go to lots of panels, but I don't know if I get some earth-shattering insight. So to put you on the stage, maybe we have two entrepreneurs here who are working on trying to redefine a vision of how AI can be used in teaching. And I thought maybe we could start with the two of you, Jose and Eunice, sharing a little bit of how you see, let's say if we were to look 5 years out, maybe 2030, what could be the vision of what teaching and learning would look like if AI was used in a best case kind of scenario. Would either of you like to open?
You can go if you want.
Okay, thank you. So we just a little bit of context. We are Latin America focused organization. We work mainly with low income schools, both private and public schools, but low income. And that means that we have several constraints, right? We work in low tech environments. The only technology available or device available in the school, in the classroom, is the teacher's smartphone. and probably they don't even have internet connection, um, or it's likely. And Unfortunately, there are low skilled teachers. Probably they are teaching math, even though they were not trained in math. So that's to give you just a little bit of context. According to the regulation, they should be spending 70% of their time working in class with students and 30% of their time preparing lessons, reporting, and the truth is they do spend 70% of the shift working with their students in class, but they spend another 70% of a regular shift working on others. And probably they also have a second job because the pay is not good. And probably that second job is not necessarily in teaching, but as a taxi driver or an Uber or a restaurant, right? So that is, in that context, a teacher needs to prepare a great lesson, needs to be able to understand very well how their students are doing. She needs to curate and select the best materials for tomorrow's lesson, and probably she has a bit of some challenges in the classroom, students with differentiated needs, conflict, cognitive challenges, motivational challenges. So then the question is, what is the role of teaching today? In that sense, it's a very challenging role. But what if technology can help a little bit with that, right? What if we can help that low skilled teacher in a low tech environment curating best in class tools to help teachers actually in in a short period of time be able to bring those best in class tools to their students. When we talk about best in class, we're not necessarily talking about Stanford, or we are working with Stanford, but we are also talking about best in class tools developed locally that have a lot of evidence that can work precisely to that context. What if we can help teachers automating things that are cumbersome, even boring, and so they can dedicate more time to more high value activities with their students? What if we can help them assessing their students quicker, using their phones to understand how each of their students are doing on reading fluency? 70% of Latin American 10-year-old students don't understand a simple text when they read. So, what if we can help teachers run formative assessments on a continuous basis? And so on and so on. We believe that AI has this, if done right, it has a lot of challenges, and I'm eager to discuss that as well. And I have a list of concerns that at some point keep me awake at night. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of potential if we can use AI to bring like this type of support that can help the type of teachers that we want to work with to actually empower them, make them better teachers, have a better work style, a lifestyle at work, and eventually improve learning outcomes.
So Jose, if I can play back simplistically what I took away, you have a vision that a teacher could have a set of content and tools which are from the best in the world with them in a classroom to make their life more efficient and to make their teaching more effective with a student. Is that a fair summary? Wonderful. Eunice, if you could build on what you think the vision is a few years out, and feel free to be bold as you
Yeah.
like.
Thank you. Definitely agree with what Jose mentioned. Just a brief background. We're mainly focused on the MENA region, North Africa, Arabic-speaking countries. And I personally come from a background doing MOOCs, so usually deploying in millions of learners in when doing such systems. And our main focus is specifically public sector education from the government side. So, for example, in the US, when you look at the ratios of administration versus educators, you tend to find around a 50-50% ratio. In private sector, you tend to find 75-25% ratio, more educators than admins, which makes things more efficient. In terms of costs, you look at it's almost 50% more expensive in terms of raw costs for someone to go through the public sector, just because of all of the overall operations that are extra over there. And one of the main things that we've been looking at is how to deploy such systems on a national scale by reducing the costs. And one thing that I always like to say, when you look at ChatGPT subscriptions, for example, they cost $20 a month. When you go to any country, even though like we're working with Saudi Arabia or Qatar or Kuwait or different entities, you just cannot charge $20 per user per month because it's just too expensive. And the most you can charge, at least from going into the market and seeing what things are like, is probably around $10 per year, which is around less than $1 per month. When you look at raw costs of GPUs and all, it just becomes almost impossible to do that. So one of the things that we've been focusing on is how can you reduce the deployment costs for such countries? How do you, could use smaller models that could potentially run on the browser? How could you, reduce the cost on the operating side of the admin to educator ratio? And we've seen a tremendous amount of, low-hanging fruits when it comes to that side. The other thing is, of course, different countries tend to have different problems. You can't just use a plug and play large language model. So you need to actually do the fine tuning. You need to do the data collection mechanism. And when you look at OpenAI's, costs, main source of funding, you see like they have like $30 billion in investments. Most of it actually goes in data collection, then compute power. So you cannot expect a government that's, their entire budget is a few $1 billion to go and build an equivalent large language model. So one of the things that we've done is we deploy such systems to help us collect the data sets, and think of it as two business models. You can either have like the Waymo, the self-driving car of Google, where you hire someone that collects the data sets for you, or you can have Teslas where you sell the car, and then you can have 3 million people driving and collecting the data sets for you, which is a much more efficient way and use of resources for these countries. So that's another angle that we've been anchoring on, to allow these countries to go below the $1 per user per month price point, to be able to deploy such systems that Jose was talking about.
Yeah, so when I think about the vision that Jose is sharing, which was very much in a classroom or a school, and you think about it, and how do we get that kind of quality to a much wider audience across the system by bringing down costs and looking at data. Let me open it up to the rest of the group. John, I know you're a futurist. I was looking last night at the books you've written and thinking about the future of what learning might look like. Do you have any thoughts and comments of when we and feel look a few years out, what could teaching look like?
Well, I think, especially speaking to the Latin context, right? Latin American context, no? Yes, solo un martillo, no? It's just a hammer, right? Like a tool, right? With hammers, you could, the best I can use a hammer for is hanging pictures. That's about the extent of my skill in using it. You can make beautiful stuff with a hammer, right? You can kill somebody with a hammer on purpose or by accident too. And so we have to view these things as tools for what they are. The real danger here, and you're just touching on it, I think, is the question of quality. I think that there's a rush to think that this stuff is effective and it's cheap. AI does not scale very well in national context. It gets really expensive really fast. And then there's the question of quality. And I've been on so many meetings, so many calls, largely with companies in the Latin American market. You're like, okay, let's create content, create content, and literally say, don't worry about quality. You have people who are working on that. Yeah, right. So if there's a push to use, there's a push to create, but the quality controls, the human controls, just quite aren't there yet. So as we look towards the future, because AI tools right now are incredibly dumb, they know literally nothing. There is no knowledge in there. It's just an algorithm's best guess as to what you want to get out of it. But once we start to develop machines that actually build knowledge or can create new knowledge with you, I think there's some possibilities. But we have to look at the scalability questions that are totally related to this, right? Right now, we rely on a handful of companies who have, a monopoly on the entire conversation, right? And you see this with if you're using ChatGPT or other things, you ask it questions about using AI in education, and no matter what it spits back at you, it always includes something about, yeah, you have to be ethical in the use of AI, right? This is because a company wants to offload the responsibility of ethics onto each of us, rather than companies themselves. And so the question is, when we get responses like that, are we programming the machines, or are we just simply being programmed ourselves?
I feel like we're jumping deep into some of the challenges, right? Which is around quality, which is around ethics, which is around cost. I'm just going to hold us back just for a few minutes. Before we look at the challenges, if we were to say, okay, in the years to come, we're going to find certain ways to overcome these challenges. What's the dream? What's now that you're being a teacher in a classroom, and if I think that there's a conversation yesterday with Brookings, and they talked about how young people need to be anchored in a sense of purpose and ethics. They need to be able to build great relationships. They need to have joyful learning, which is all the softer side, and on the other side, there's all the learning stuff, right? So share like what could be an aspirational vision of what teaching looks like with AI a few years down the line. Do you have a thought, or do others have?
I can think of two different ways of using AI for teaching. One is from the perspective of the teacher, and mostly in line with what Jose has been saying, supporting the teacher in the educational tasks that the teacher needs to do, not in the classroom. Planning classes, reviewing students' work, finding information to teach, creating content for students. That's a lot of the work a teacher does, and it takes a lot of time. And I can see a large role there for AI to support all of those tasks, to help us create better content, to help us find better content that is already created by others and use it, maybe adapting it locally to our context through the AI. And I can see a great future there for both teachers and students. And then the other part is actually using the AI to learn and in the classroom. And I feel that the first part is mostly focused on individual learning. And me using the AI as a teacher to be more efficient, or as a student to grasp concepts more quickly, to have personalized information and things I'm interested in. But I think the other piece that we're not asking enough about is how can we use AI to support collaboration, to support project-based learning, to support inquiry-based learning. And I see another very interesting route there where the AI is more like a collaborator with both the teacher and the student. And it can help both. It can help the teacher manage a little bit of that messy classroom that comes out of those more modern pedagogies. And on the other hand, it can support students by helping the teacher be in places they cannot be. So if I am teaching in a PBL classroom, I cannot listen to every student, and some of the things the students say get lost. Like things get lost here. We're not writing anything down. So as soon as I stop talking, this has gone away. And that's why we invented writing in humanity. That's one thing that I think we can do with AI: capture the live classroom discourse and make it persistent and something that you can talk about. So the teacher can ask the AI, what misconceptions did my students express in their thinking? What interesting ideas did Anshul have that I can connect with others? What questions are still pending?
Yeah.
And I think those are supports for collaboration that are more at the group level than in the individual level.
Thank you, Nando. What you're sharing makes me think of a conversation I had with someone leading Google for Education about 6 months ago. And he said, we've been working with all types of online learning over the last, couple of decades. And he said, what I think is the most powerful here is we've never had a personal coach for students or for teachers. And we have the ability to have a one-on-one personal coach. And amongst the many things that you're sharing, For him, that one stood out as potentially the most powerful. How do people react to that? Is that the most powerful, or you think there's others that are the most powerful? Glenn,
Yeah,
please.
I worry about calling one the most powerful, but I agree a lot with what's been said and certainly what Fernando just said. But I think if we're really looking down the road, classrooms have always been there's a teacher, there are students, there may be teachers' aides, there are textbooks, there may be videos. There's a set of elements that are in interaction. And I think see it as down the road, we'll have another element that are AI agents. And they can play many, many roles. And certainly when I talk with school folks, I think the starting point is helping teachers develop lesson plans, personalized lessons. But there are so many different things AI can do. And our challenge is to figure out how to maintain good quality or create good quality in the classroom with these agents, how to reinforce and further the role of teachers in doing the many, many things that only teachers can do. We were in a classroom with the COSIN group yesterday, a wonderful elementary classroom. And in each classroom, there were interactive things going on. They were doing robots, they were doing all kinds of things. And there was this joy, and there was this joy between the students and the teachers. And that's not what AI creates. And there was trust, and there was inspiration. So I think we really need to focus on another element in the classroom that allows the teacher to be a more powerful teacher and spend more time with the students. But I don't know if do I have to hold off on the negative
No,
view of
please,
that?
please,
I
please.
flip between the two. Um, on the other side, that there's this idea that AI will just tutor students, that the teacher's role will be reduced rather than increased, which I think would be disastrous. And I particularly worry, and this is a US context, but I know it applies elsewhere, around the equity and inclusion issues. AI can be a tremendous asset for students in our country who are English language learners. Can do having the immediate translation. It can provide feedback. It can do all kinds of things. But I worry we could see in the future that the students in the more impoverished environments are getting a lot of time with AI, basically as that teacher or tutor, and they're being prepared for tests and to do sort of very standard stuff. Where in the more privileged environments, they have high quality human teachers and they're learning how to be in control of the AI and use the AI. So I think as we look ahead, we really have to keep in mind the dangers of this driving our opportunity and achievement gaps to be bigger rather than smaller.
How do others react to that? Is this a potential equalizer where we can get, for example, these modern pedagogies that we could help teachers better lesson plan these modern pedagogies when they don't have that training and therefore it's beneficial to low cost environments? Or is it something that's going to be a greater, create greater divide? What do others feel?
Let me just jump in real quick. I really see these as assistive technologies more than anything. One thing we're piloting now, this is with the World Bank, is using AI to help measure the development of hard to measure skills and competencies. This is related to the VOC program. So it's like entrepreneurship or your creative visionary. These sort of things are really hard to tell or really hard for mentors to work with, especially with written work. So just like the quick pilot, just taking inputs from Moodle in the form of portfolio posts or essays, be able to read back and do a lot of that, really trying to offload that cognitive processing that a mentor or teacher. I mean, it takes a lot of work to really read and create these sort of value judgments and provide feedback. Does it replace the teacher or the role? No, but it helps with that initial review at least and help offloading a lot of that cognitive work. And the results we had so far are actually quite promising. So as you know, I don't mean as much as probably sound like a contrarian a little bit before on AI, though. I think the realistic view is that it's that if we look at it as an opportunity for collaboration or co-creative work, it really does help offload a lot of that cognitive work and to allow time for teachers to do things that teachers should be doing.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jose.
So to your question on the digital divide, I think it depends on the type of product that us as entrepreneurs would be building, right? I was in San Diego for ASU GSV, the largest tech event, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, and we were walking down the aisle asking all of them, do you need a student device for your tool to work? Yes. Everyone required a device for their students. And that doesn't work in the Latin American context. If that tool is going to be deployed, then the gap is going to be widened. So the question is how, and you have to do that not only in terms of device, but in terms of the language, in terms of the learning model, in terms of it's so many different levels. You need to be very aware of this is an assisted tool. What is what we are going to be bringing to the specific context to close the gap instead of widening it.
But also, if I can just build on that, I think it's interesting that concerns around quality equity tend to emanate uh, from the affluent West, and I'm not minimizing the concerns in any way, but I think it's interesting that you started by having us sort of paint some kind of idealized picture of um, what good teaching and learning with AI looks like, and then to a certain extent, if you start from that vantage point, then the problems kind of fall out naturally. And well, what should we be worried about? What should we look out for? If you start though with the premise that Jose kind of briefly alluded to, but we kind of then quickly glossed over it, which is at the moment you have contexts in LATAM. It's probably worse in sub-Saharan Africa and parts of South Asia, where with the current human only, let's call it, system, we have essentially failure rates, of 70 to 80%, where you're not getting kids, age 10 cannot read, they cannot do basic arithmetic. You start from that, and then you ask yourself, okay, if I deploy this technology, you know, can I start changing that picture? Then you start maybe thinking in a slightly different, more pragmatic way, which is to say, okay, okay, I've got, what can I work with? Well, most teachers have, at least an Android phone, right? So let me see if I can use AI to make their life easier. We know that they're not going to, this is not going to transform them into super teachers by any stretch of the imagination, but is it going to allow them to do their job that little bit better so that the kids can learn to read, write, and do basic arithmetic? And I think for those of us who are, working in emerging contexts, that's really what we need to worry about more than can I, get to this idealized, you know, standard of teaching and learning. Again, don't mean to minimize the concerns and the dangers, but I think the framing of it depends very much on your context.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that. And uh, many years ago, I was at EDC for many years, and we did a lot of work in sub-Saharan Africa, and it was radio education because radio was the only technology to deliver it. So now that we have a much more interactive, powerful technology, there are great things to be done. Absolutely agree. It's all context based. We also tend to have these global conversations, and they need to separate things. What this means for a first grader learning to read versus a high school student studying calculus, and everything in between. It's not the same, and we have to be cautious in making these global statements about it.
On that, Glenn, yesterday there was a slide put up by Rebecca and the Brookings team showing student engagement and the
Yes.
level of happiness and engagement of students at different age groups. I think this was for the US context. And yeah,
Yeah,
and that's exactly right, Nanda, which is you looked at grade 3 or so, and there was 75% of children who said they felt very engaged with learning. And as you went for grade to grade to grade, it slowly dropped from 75% to children feeling on average, 25% of students feel engaged by the time they're in, I think it's already eighth or ninth grade or so, and it stays at that level. So when you look at that context and you
Yeah.
think, is that going to get affected in any way or improved or not improved with the kind of conversation that we're having? Does anyone have any thoughts or comments? And feel free to come in at any point as you feel fit.
Yes. Well, for me, artificial intelligence, I think is like any other technology, or at least it is accelerating things. But what is most important before we are able to use it properly is that we use the humanity, the skills we actually need to be human. So I'm actually working on a program which is opposite from artificial intelligence, because if we don't know who we are and what we actually doing to ourselves or to each other, how can we then trust on the technology? So for me, and the other thing it is, I mean, most children are, or most people are, and also this event, have been on their mobile phone all the time, whereas that's not the real world. The real world is us, looking in the eyes and have fun and the energy, which we're all going to lose out when we, do too much with artificial intelligence. So and there's indeed one thing all people have in common all over the world is they want to be happy. And happiness is not what is given by the market at the moment. That's pleasure. Happiness is something is given to you. It's for free. It's you don't have to do anything for it, and you feel grateful. And that is something which is content and it's staying with you. So, I'm very grateful to be here and I take it with me. And I'm happy to share this information because I hope it's very important that you're conscious that artificial intelligence is not going to give us humanity. So we should use it as a tool. Um, that's my opinion. So
Is it what I'm starting to hear from the group? Ivan, you want to say something?
yeah.
Okay.
No, to follow up, I'm glad to hear that because anytime I have students or families discussing something with me in my office, there's an issue, there's anything, I always tell them that the most important for us as a school community is to have students who are happy, because when you're happy, it's gonna be easy to learn anything. So the emotions, and going back to what also Ignacio Martinez mentioned this morning, um, it's very important that we feel alive in the class, and it is proven already that you learn better when there are emotions involved. You remember things better when you're feeling these emotions, and what you're learning about resonates with you is always better. So that's something that I just wanted to highlight. However, and going back to what you mentioned of students' engagement, mm, what we're going to see happening more often in the following months, hopefully only until we're able to um, handle the steering wheel and move everything to where it should be, or use the artificial intelligence properly, as you mentioned earlier, are students who see in the artificial intelligence a way to do things faster and simpler, maybe with not much quality, and families who would be worried about it. So probably that's going to be one of the immediate challenges that we are all seeing at schools. The role of teachers in providing tools, tasks, activities, experiences for them to use other tools, also artificial intelligence, but to have other tools and set of skills is very, very, very important. And something completely out of the but I believe we mentioned all of these things. Just one that I believe is very interesting, linked with artificial intelligence and with what Stavros mentioned earlier, is that there are schools with members of staff fully devoted to analyze data coming from assessments, standardized tests, etc., etc. To me, it's very interesting how artificial intelligence could help in analyzing this data for us and helping us point to where should we focus our efforts in terms of learning.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I want to talk to the engagement piece a bit. And my sense there is, and following up on something Glenn said, there's a danger of equity in putting lower socioeconomic status students in schools to work with AI to have an automated teacher, and more affluent students to have a real person. And my sense is that engagement, even though I see my kid very interested in his video games, does not come from your relationship with the computer, but through your relationship with another person. And engagement in the classroom comes through that relationship of trust that you build with your teacher, with your classmates, and with the content. If we remove two of those, the teacher and the classmates, and leave only the student and the content, I believe there's rarely going to be engagement. And I see a trend, mostly in developed countries like the US, where that's what's happening to less affluent communities. I see schools, I visited a friend in Oklahoma a few weeks back, and he told me his kids in high school mostly have math class with an online tutor. They rarely have a math teacher, and their math teacher is not somebody who can have a good discussion about a math. And that's what really engages you and gets you interested in math. Unless you have that conversation with a person about the interesting details of that problem, you're not going to get engaged by watching Khan Academy videos or repeating drill and kill exercises. So to connect finally with my last part, I'd say as long as we use the AI to help us collaborate, to help us connect with others, that will create more engagement. If we use it as a delivery system for that view of personalized education where everybody's in their own silo doing their own thing, that's not going to be engaging for anybody.
Yeah, I'll just mention in support of that. This is all at the experimental stage, but we have a lot of work at Stanford looking at AI to support collaboration and collaboration learning. And the question is the AI agent a member of the collaborative team? Is it a coach for the team? Is it a coach for individuals? Do you have something saying, "Hey, stop talking too much," or "Make sure you picked up that point"? There's so many different roles it can play. But there've been some interesting things where every once in a while, AI just shocks me. I think we all have this experience. It did that where it was coaching a simulated team, and it was very much right on. It was ChatGPT 4.0. There's also research by Dora Dembski of AI analyzing classroom interactions. So really serving as a coach to the teacher and picking up, are you asking questions that are closed? So you just get these brief answers from students. Are you only engaging some of your students and not others? So I think we take a step back, just having AI contribute to the kind of interactions we want to see could be a very important asset.
Yeah. Which I know we're on time, which I guess comes to the heart of what intentionality, right? What I'm hearing from you as a group, which is if we have a very clear sense of purpose of what we're trying to do with young people, if they're happy in the deeper sense of the word, have a sense of purpose and ethics and grounding and relationships, and we make sure that is the front and center of teaching and learning, and then very intentionally think about where can AI as a tool help with the kinds of things you were talking about, such that implementation, Ivan, what you were saying, when you come down to implementation, it veers towards that vision that we really have. I know the time was short, but thank you to each and every one of you. And if someone has a dying last word, they're welcome to. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up.
Not
There.
dying, but I can bring the last one. I think we hit on important things. When I talk to education leaders and policymakers, the theme is always, AI is here, and people are going, what do we do with this AI? That's not the right question for educators. We know we have the equity gaps. We know we have teacher workforce gaps and teacher shortages. We know we have problems with student engagement and learning. The list can go on, but I think we have to step back as educators and say, these are our big challenges. How can we use AI to help meet them? Not what the hell do we do with this AI that just appeared in our classroom?
Yeah. Thank you, Ben. Thank you. Thank you to each and every one of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, Stavros, if I cut you off at the end. No, we've met before. Was it at Brook? I'm just curious. Yeah. Were you the one in Palo Alto? Yeah, that's where it is.
In February, Stanford.
Yes. Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
pandemics. It's like this
And then
before and after.